Welcome back to our channel. Today, we are going to explore a deeply insightful topic that impacts every one of us, the attachment to the self, and why it is often considered the root cause of suffering in our lives. How often have you found yourself caught in moments of frustration, anxiety, or sadness, simply because you were clinging to certain beliefs about yourself? Whether it's our identity, our self-worth, or our unyielding need to protect that sense of self, this attachment is the root of so much of our pain. In today's video, we will examine the concept of attachment to the self from a Buddhist perspective and explore how it contributes to our suffering. We will delve into how our attachment to who we think we are, or who we think we should be, keeps us stuck in cycles of conflict, confusion, and emotional turmoil. But more importantly, we'll uncover how we can break free from this suffering by understanding and releasing this attachment. So, let's take a deep dive into how understanding the self and letting go of this attachment can bring peace and clarity into our lives. The self as an illusion, understanding the Buddhist perspective. To begin, let's first take a step back and examine what Buddhism teaches us about that self. In Buddhism, the self is not seen as a permanent, unchanging entity. Instead, it is understood as a construct, something we create in our minds and cling to. This idea is encapsulated in the Buddhist concept of Tonotta, or non-self, which teaches that our sense of self is not inherent, nor is it a fixed reality. From this perspective, attachment to the self is considered a delusion. The more we identify with this transient and impermanent self, the more we suffer. Why? Because this self we cling to is always changing. Our moods, our thoughts, our circumstances, all of these fluctuate. When we base our identity on such unstable and fleeting conditions, we set ourselves up for inevitable disappointment and pain. The cycle of suffering created by self-attachment. But now, let's look at how attachment to the self creates suffering. We all experience moments of discomfort and pain when our self-image is challenged. For example, when we face failure, criticism, or rejection, the pain isn't just about the event itself, it is about how it affects our identity. We may feel that our worth is diminished, or that we've somehow failed as a person. This is because, at a deep level, we believe that the self is something that needs to be defended, protected, and maintained. Whenever that self is threatened, we react with defensiveness, anger, fear, or even despair. These emotional responses only perpetuate our suffering, as they feed into a cycle of attachment and aversion. One of the key teachings of Buddhism is that this attachment to the self leads us to create desires and aversions that further entangle us in suffering. We desire things that will reinforce our sense of self, and we avoid or reject things that challenge or undermine our identity. This cycle of desire and aversion, known as samsara, keeps us trapped in a perpetual state of dissatisfaction. Realizing the freedom of letting go of the self. The good news is that there is a path out of this cycle. Buddhism offers us the powerful practice of letting go of attachment to the self. By understanding that the self is impermanent and not as solid as we believe it to be, we can begin to free ourselves from the endless cycle of suffering. This process begins with mindfulness and self-awareness. We need to cultivate a deeper understanding of how we create and maintain our attachment to the self. Through meditation, reflection, and mindfulness in daily life, we can start to observe how our thoughts and feelings arise around our sense of identity. We can begin to notice when we are reacting from a place of ego and self-attachment, and gradually learn to let go of these reactions. One of the most profound practices in Buddhism is to embrace the concept of non-attachment. This doesn't mean that we stop caring about ourselves or others, but it means that we stop clinging to an image of the self that we feel we must protect. We start to see ourselves and others as part of a vast, interconnected whole, rather than as isolated and separate beings with fixed identities. transforming suffering through compassion and wisdom. As we let go of attachment to the self, we open ourselves up to two key virtues in Buddhism: compassion and wisdom. These qualities arise naturally when we release the grip of ego and self-attachment. Compassion allows us to see beyond our own needs and desires, and to connect with the suffering of others. Wisdom helps us understand the impermanent nature of life and helps us navigate challenges with greater equanimity. By practicing compassion and wisdom, we begin to see that our suffering is not unique to us alone. We are all interconnected, and the pain we experience is shared by all sentient beings. This realization opens the door to true freedom. As we release our attachment to the self, we develop a profound sense of peace, as we no longer feel the need to defend, protect, or prove our worth. The path to true liberation, letting go of the illusion of the self. Ultimately, the practice of letting go of attachment to the self is a path to liberation. It frees us from the emotional turmoil and stress that arise from our constant need to protect our identity. By learning to let go, we begin to live more fully in the present moment, embracing life as it is, without the constant filtering of our experiences through the lens of ego. This freedom allows us to experience life with more joy, peace, and love. It allows us to form deeper connections with others, as we are no longer caught up in the need to maintain a separate, individual self. Instead, we see ourselves as part of the greater whole, interconnected with all beings. The practice of non-attachment to the self is not about denying who we are or losing our sense of individuality. It's about freeing ourselves from the suffering that comes from clinging to an illusion of permanence. When we stop holding on to the self so tightly, we allow ourselves to experience the fluidity and beauty of life without resistance or fear. Conclude and embracing freedom from the self. In today's video, we've explored how attachment to the self is the root of much of our suffering, and how Buddhist teachings offer us a path to liberation through non-attachment. By understanding that the self is not a fixed, permanent entity, we can free ourselves from the cycle of desire and aversion that keeps us trapped in samsara. As we let go of our attachment to the self, we open ourselves to greater peace, wisdom, and compassion. We move beyond the limitations of ego and connect with the world in a more authentic and loving way. Thank you for joining us today. If you have any experiences or thoughts on how attachment to the self has affected your life, we'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Please like, subscribe, and share this video to help others on their journey toward freedom and peace. We'll see you in the next video.